My family moved to a new neighborhood the summer before I started junior high. My new school was much smaller than my previous one. Not only the building, but the class sizes as well. The homerooms averaged only 18 students each, so most of us got to know one another pretty well. There was another sixth grader. I'll call him George. He wasn't in my homeroom. His was the next room over. It didn't matter though. He was always sneaking off to other classrooms anyway. There also was a particular eighth grader I'll call Colin. Colin was a great singer and even better basketball player. A lot of the girls around school had crushes on Colin. He even received special privileges from his teachers sometimes. Colin was probably the most popular kid at school, but it could also be argued that George was just as popular, just for all the wrong reasons. George didn't seem like a bad kid. He just didn't seem much interested in school. He played around a lot, which kept him in trouble. But no matter how many times we saw him sitting in the principal's office, we never saw his parents up at the school. As we all know, kids are cruel, and George wasn't exactly handsome. So even though the rest of the students often laughed at his antics, no one was really George's friend. He always ate lunch alone and often got into teasing matches with other students, which despite his humor, he often lost just due to being unliked because of his looks. Thinking back, I guess that's why he acted out so much. He probably just wanted compassion. Sometimes George and I would walk the same way home. That is, on the days he didn't have detention. George lived a few blocks away from me, or at least that was his story. I've never been to his house or even on his street. In fact, I can't remember him even mentioning what street he lived on. One day, while him and I were walking home from school, somehow we got on the topic of what we wanted to do for our careers. Back then, I thought I wanted to be a dog breeder, but that's a different story. When George told me what he wanted to be, at first it sounded kind of juvenile, but as he kept elaborating, it just got weird. George said he wanted to be a superhero. I probably laughed because George was always acting like a fool, but he kept going. He said he wanted to beat up people who hurt others. He wanted to save the kids who had bad things happen to them. He even described in details the weapons he wanted to invent to help him fight crime. The years passed. We graduated from eighth grade, and I probably only saw George here and there in passing a handful of times after that. He was always alone, always looking like he had no destination, just out and about. I would talk to him for a few minutes, then we part ways, often for years until I saw him again the next time. I moved out of state after college. I could make a lot more money with my degree away from home. One day I was playing hooky from my job. I was laying around my apartment waiting for my girlfriend to get off of work and come over to visit. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Usually I didn't answer those type, but I figured it could be her calling from one of her work lines. It wasn't though. It was a detective. He wanted to meet me in person, but I was 300 miles away, so the phone call would have to do. He told me he couldn't get into a lot of detail on the call, but what he told me was enough. 4 murders had been committed in my hometown a few days prior, all on the same day. George was the number one suspect. As to the reason for the detective's call, when George was arrested, he was carrying a notepad on him. In that notepad, he had made a list. Two, actually. The okay list and the not okay list. 5 names were crossed out on the not okay list. 3 of those 5 names were some of the victims George had been arrested for. Somehow, over 10 years after last seeing him, my name was one included on his okay list. Makes me wonder how long he had been keeping it. The rest of what I know is mostly rumors. Last I heard, George was supposed to be receiving psychiatric help. None of our mutual acquaintances know what happened for sure. Some days I sit and think about how far gone George's mind had to be to go through with something like that. Then other days, I wonder if George thought he really became a superhero. What if the people he hurt, he knew were actually bad people who had hurt others? I'm not saying that would make his actions right, just more peculiar.